Hi everyone, my name is Layla. You might know me as the Russian spy or the election hacker or Layla, but it's not my real name. My name is Layla and I hope that you remembered it by the end of this year. Today I'm going to talk about a short story called Happy Endings. It was written by Margaret Atwood and she's not American, she's not Russian or Azerbaijani, and she's a Canadian writer. I hope that you'll be able to see her face here. So her smile is kind of creepy, but she's the nicest lady and she's really talented. So I'm going to tell you a few fun facts about her life and her achievements. Fun fact number one about her life, she is not only a poet, novelist, inventor, teacher, literary critic, but also an environmental activist. And I think that it's amazing, and she is a really hardworking woman. Fun fact number two, since 1961, she has published 18 books of poetry, 18 novels, 11 books of nonfiction, 9 collections of short fiction, 8 children books, 9 graphic novels, as well as a number of small press editions of both poetry and fiction. Fun fact number three, she has won numerous awards and honors for her writing, such as Franz Kafka Award, Governor General's Award, Arthur C. Clarke Award, and many more. So you can tell by what I just said that she's a really talented lady and she's also really hardworking. So I decided to choose one of her stories today to make a presentation about. This story is called Happy Endings, as I said before, and I chose it because of its interesting structure and the dark meaning behind the story. So, what is this story about? Well, it's not just a story. As I said before, it has quite a unique structure. So, it's not one big whole story as we're used to. It has different scenarios or sections of the story. In this story, there are 6 scenarios total, and before everything starts, there are a few sentences about the main characters who are John and Mary. They meet each other there. Then goes the first scenario, or scenario A. This scenario, I think, is one of the most important ones, and it's really basic, and you will understand why later. So, in this scenario, John and Mary meet each other and fall in love. They have challenging and stimulating jobs and love life. They buy a house, have children, have nice and beautiful friends, go on vacations together, then they retire and die. That's the ending. On the other hand, the scenario B is much more interesting and darker. In this scenario, Mary falls in love with John, but John doesn't like her back. He uses Mary's body for his sexual pleasures and comes to her house a few times a week. When he comes over, they have dinner, then they have sex, and then John falls asleep. While he's asleep, Mary washes the dishes because she doesn't want John to think that she's untidy. Then he wakes up, doesn't really say anything, even a goodbye, and walks out of her house. Everybody around Mary says that he's not a good guy for her and she should probably break up with him, but she really loves John. Mary doesn't really like the sexual part of their relationship as well. She just thinks that if they have sex a lot, then John will become dependent on her and they will get married at the end. One day, John complains about the food she cooked and she becomes really sad. Then a few days later, her friends say that they saw John eating in a restaurant with another woman. Mary becomes even more upset and depressed about it. But she's not upset because of the other woman. She's upset because John never took her to the restaurant. So she takes a lot of sleeping pills and hopes for John to come and rescue her. However, nobody comes and she dies. After Mary dies, John marries another woman whose name is Madge, and everything proceeds like in the scenario A. In the scenario C, John is an older man and he's in love with Mary, but Mary doesn't really like him back. She loves somebody else, and his name is James. However, she still sleeps with John because she feels bad for him. Thursday is the day that they sleep together, and that's the only time John can get away from his family. He has a wife and 2 kids. One day, Mary and James get high and climb into the bed together in Mary's apartment. John, who has the keys to Mary's apartment, finds them there. John is hardly in any position to get jealous, considering the fact that he has a wife and 2 kids, but he still does. And he goes to a gun shop and buys a gun, saying that he needs it for target practice. But yeah, then he comes home and kills Mary and James and himself at the end. Nice. Then his wife, whose name is Madge, marries another man whose name is Fred, and everything proceeds like in the scenario A. In the scenario D, Fred and Madge are a really nice couple. They're great at solving small difficulties that come along their marriage. But then one day, a huge tidal wave approaches. Real estate values go down, and the rest of the story is about the tidal wave, where it came from, and how the couple escaped from it. Everything proceeds like in the scenario A at the end. In the story E, Fred has a really bad heart, and it's about Fred and Madge being really understanding and kind until Fred dies, unfortunately. Then Madge devotes herself to charity works until the end of A. And in the last story, or the scenario F, the author is saying that it doesn't really matter what kind of characters you will have, because everything is going to end the same way. Everybody dies. It's truly fascinating to me how Margaret Atwood achieved the emotionless narrative in the story through mixing the second and third narrative point of view, and it's also interesting how the lack of the development of the characters in the first scenario really made me realize that the conclusion of the story, or how the relationship ended, did not really matter. It was all about the introduction or the middle part of the story, because this is what makes the story interesting, the actions and the development of the characters. Well, I believe that the meaning of the story was quite straightforwardly set at the end. The author is trying to say that the endings will not really matter, or conclusions will not really matter, because they're always the same, but the middle part and the beginning of the story are the parts that usually are more unique, and they make the story different from everything else. So I think that is also the reason why Mr. Becker chose the story, and I myself really enjoyed it.